Welcome back to Behind the Tab, a GoTab produced podcast that dives into the evolving world of hospitality through the lens of technology, creativity, and community. Each episode spotlights the game changing innovations, real world operator stories, and GoTab's own team members who are redefining what it means to serve and scale in modern food and beverage. Today, we are welcomed by Parker Loudermilk, co owner and operator of Fait La Force Brewing in Nashville, Tennessee. So let's get right into that conversation. All right, welcome back to Behind the Tab. I am your host today, Adam Howe, and I am very glad to be joined by our guest, Parker Loudermilk from Fait La Force Brewing in Nashville, Tennessee. Parker, we had a chance to meet. We just talked about this before recording, and I don't remember the exact date, but it's had to have been within the last year or so. And so I've had this is great for me. I've done a couple of these podcasts where we've interviewed people. I've done one on site, but mostly these are remote recordings as we're doing today. But what's nice is I've actually been in your space. I've been in Fait La Force. I have a good feeling for what that space looks like. So I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts on how that came to be, where you guys are going. We're going to talk a lot about, a little bit more about being in Nashville and being in that scene as well. And then just how you see hospitality kind of fitting in with where you guys fit in the hospitality scene within that space as well. Before I do that, thank you so much for joining us. How you doing?
Doing great, Adam. I was gonna say thank you so much for having me on. I'm excited to get into this with you.
Oh, amazing. All right, so let's get into what we like to call like the origin story. The ultimately the why Fait La Force even exists in the first place. So let's start. Let's give you the opportunity to give your elevator pitch to all of our listeners as to what Fait La Force is, why it exists, and why you are kind of different from any other option that people might have, and why you decide to go in that direction.
Yeah, I think when thinking of Nashville, what makes us different than anyone else is we have parking. So that's a
Oh,
good
okay.
one. But but no, so for us, like when Zach and Zach's my business partner, when we were talking about starting Fait La Force, the thing for us was we were both super passionate about beer. We were both brewing at the time. And we were really passionate about Belgian and European styles of beer, which was definitely happening across the country. It wasn't really a thing that had kind of taken root in Nashville yet. It definitely has now, with a couple of different breweries, but the style of beer and then also just the space was different. So, going back pre-pandemic, a lot of the craft beer scene was just very like macho male driven, very, you go into a craft brewery and they all kind of look the same. It was like reclaimed wood and it was like reclaimed like tin siding and just like some folding chairs in a concrete space. And like it just felt like a place for some dudes to hang out in a garage and drink some beer, which was like cool, but it kind of became a very exclusive, not maybe not intentionally exclusive, but it did exclude a lot of people from feeling welcome and feeling comfortable
Sure.
there. And so our mindset was like, let's make some beer that we think is really beautiful and really important and like historically like some of the more prevalent beer styles that just aren't
Mhm.
shining in our city, but also do it in a space that does feel welcoming, that does, invite more people to the table to share beers, share stories. And so I think that's what we've kind of done here. Like if you come to our space, like you said, you've been in here, it's old world Victorian feeling. There's like some old couches. It's very like soft and warm and welcoming, and there's lots of portraits and it feels like a space that, a lot of people walk in here and they're like, what is this place? And then they'll come up and ask, what we have and ask about what beers we have. And like, well, we have our beer. And they're like, oh, and like, well, where do you make it? I'm like, we make it here, like right on the other side of this wall. I'm like, oh, this is a brewery. Whoa. And that was kind of what we were hoping for, is that you would come in, it feels like a nice warm spot to have a beer and exchange ideas. And then also it's a brewery, not you walk in and it's like I'm
Right.
standing in a brewery.
Yeah, we are sitting, we are recording this at the very beginning of 2026. And as we know, like have been multiple craft brewery booms over the last 30 years or so. Oh, and then also, kind of a downturn in general, what we're kind of seeing right now as well. So when you guys built out Fait La Force, you're coming, as you told me right before we started recording, you're coming up on your 4-year anniversary of actually opening. Obviously, there was some planning that you could do an anniversary party that was like a 6-year anniversary party,
Right.
based on all the stuff that happened beforehand. But regardless, do you find yourself bringing in a lot more, or targeting? I don't know if targeting is even the right word, but like, do you see a lot more locals? Do you see a lot more? Nashville is very well known to be a very tourist, centric economy. Do you see a lot more first timers, even after being open for like the last 4 years, or do you still see yourself building on that local economy more so?
A little bit of both. I mean, for sure, Nashville is a very touristy and just transient city. So like you talk to anyone who is a local here, most of them have moved here in the last 5 years. And then
Mm-hmm.
many are coming in and out. Like, the next big thing is Oracle is moving their old headquarters here. So that's a whole nother influx of people that are coming in. So the majority of people are all very new, even if they are local. And so because of that, Nashville has, a million things to do and see because it's touristy. So if you've only lived here for 5 years, you're still just like dipping your toe in the water to what
Mm-hmm.
exists. And the other side of that is our neighborhood specifically, like the Wedgwood, Houston, Chestnut Hill area, is currently developing. So when we picked this location, Nashville SC had been like announced as like we're getting a MLS franchise, but the location of the stadium hadn't been officially inked yet. There was like the rumors that it was coming to this neighborhood, but nothing official yet. But we felt confident enough that like it is probably coming here, and with that's going to come a lot of development and growth. So we picked a location here, and we picked this location in 2019, or I guess really maybe like 2018, signed the lease 2019 officially. And then the soccer stadium was announced, and we're like, all right, cool, this area's about to explode. And then the pandemic hits. And so everything has taken longer and slowed down more than we expected it to. But now it's like really starting to come online. So if you come and visit us now, if you just go like on the other side of the railroad tracks from us, there's cranes and construction sites everywhere. And then the other side of us, all these properties are now selling. So this area is about to be exploding. So we have a lot of regulars who are locals, and we like that has been our focus, is to try and be a more community driven space, a space for locals, and a space that like is kind of like we're a little bit off the beaten path. Where I'm sitting here at our garage door windows looking at the downtown skyline, so we're a walking distance from downtown, so we're not that off the beaten path, but we are kind of tucked away in a way that it naturally fosters like the locals know the spot, and tourists have a little bit harder time finding us, but still get plenty of tourists in here for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I remember just trying to, when I was in Nashville, coming to find your place, I definitely had to use my GPS to like maneuver my way to where you were. But I love the fact that you guys had the foresight to kind of see what was coming. And there was a rhyme and a reason to choosing the location that you ended up choosing. In all of my years of working in the brewing industry, I've worked for 4 different brands in 2 major market, or 2 different very, very different markets, Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area, Oakland, and then Indianapolis. And one of those breweries that I worked with in Indianapolis, Taxman Brewing, very Belgian focus, like that's all they brewed. So to your point prior, like those styles of beers haven't been the I don't know, the things that have blown up across the country really quickly. So the fact that you've also chosen to kind of really stay kind of true to that kind of your path of like what kind of beers that you guys are going to be brewing, and not really focusing, not just chasing the craze, if you will. We'll talk about a little bit more about like some of the trends that are happening little bit later. But let me give you an opportunity to kind of talk about, that portion of the business as well, like why you chose to go in that direction. You yourself, obviously you said you have business partners and what have you. But talk to me a little bit about what got you to be brewing in the first place. You said you were brewing prior to Fait La Force. What was your kind of like aha moment that like, hey, I could probably just do this on my own?
Yeah. So our origin story, so our business is just Zach and I were, two 50-50 partners. We were both engineers before this at Nissan in town, also one of the big employers in town. And we were both brewing then and both super into beer. So I got into beer, like into craft beer in college. I had some friends of mine and we had a blog because that was a thing that people did.
Sure.
And our blog was called The Guide to Imbibe, which I still think is a solid blog title, but stand by that still. But we all wrote just about different, forms of alcohol. I was writing about craft beer. We had a friend who was writing about spirits, a friend who was writing about wine, and it was kind of our excuses to hang out and drink, really. But we kind of started doing that. And then because of that, I had another group of friends who had started home brewing who were like, hey, you're writing a lot about craft beer. You should come brew with us sometime. I was like, cool. So did that and was like, wow, this is awesome. Like, I'm super into this. So I started kind of brewing with them. They wound up opening a brewery in town called Harding House, which their tap room has since closed, but they're still producing beer that you can get in like Trader Joe's and some places around town. And so when they quit, home brewing, started professional brewing, I started home brewing on my own. And then just by chance, Zach and I got, reassigned and some like corporate realignment and got put on the same team. Kind of like, oh, I'm into beer, you're into beer. Oh, you're brewing, I'm brewing. And then I learned pretty quickly, like, oh, Zach is much better at this than I am. Like his beer is fantastic. And I was like, man. And so like I was constantly like bouncing off ideas off of him. And, I always kind of viewed myself as a little bit more of like a mad hatter when it came to brewing. I like to experiment and try and just see what might happen, which sometimes resulted in good things and sometimes resulted in some pretty undrinkable things. But Zach's beer was super good. And we both were traveling a lot for work. And, we were going a lot to California, out to like Carson and LA. And I was in New York a lot. And so hitting the coast, we're just seeing a lot of beers and beer trends and like just, honestly, like a lot higher quality beers being produced in those areas of what was happening in Nashville. And we were always flying beers back for ourselves and then trying each other's beers. Eventually it was like, all right, we like these certain beer styles. We are hungry and craving these beers enough to where we're flying them in with us all the time. Why don't we just do this ourselves? Like we were both pretty unhappy with our situation that Nissan and trying to figure out what the next thing could be. And so we're like, why not us? Let's just try it. And so we started looking for us. Like we probably started business planning in like 2017, finished that in 2018, started looking for a space, found the space, signed the lease in 2019 and thought, all right, we'll be open in a year in 2020. Here we go. And COVID hit and we were like, well, all right. And fortunately for us, the space we're in is like a multi-tenant space, and we were waiting on our landlord to get all his construction done so we could really start fleshing out our space. And up until 2020 and COVID outbreak, we were like, man, this guy's taking forever. We were pretty frustrated. We were pushing him. And then the COVID outbreak hit, and we were like, you know what? Take your time. We're in no rush. You just, you do your thing. And so thought we were going to open in 2020, wound up, February of 2022, but that allowed us to kind of skip most of the headaches and hurdles that everyone else had to deal with. And we opened with masking, but we're basically able to fully open and hit it in a time when people were really trying to get back out and try beer. So it sort of worked out. But talking about beer styles specifically, in town here, we had Bearded Iris, who was super known for like their hazy IPAs. Southern Grist in town that was doing crazy adjuncted stuff that was really big. And there was the traditional, like, which you think of as like American craft breweries like Blackstone and Yazoo, who were doing just like a pale ale and amber ales and brown ales and a porter. Um, and there was kind of just a really big gap. The Black Abbey was the closest that was doing some Belgian styles in town, but I think I always say they crawled so we could walk. They I think we're just national market wasn't quite ready just to have a fully Belgian style brewery opening or European style. And so they're doing a lot of American styles as well. And so we were like, well, let's just go all the way in. We had actually talked about doing some of the funkier wild side of things, and then Barrique got going in town, and we're like, let's just focus on the clean side. And with the space limitations and stuff we have, I think that was going to be an inevitable result anyways. Like, we don't really have the space to be doing like a lot of barrel aging and storage, but mostly honestly, it's just the beers that we really like to drink. When we were traveling in Nissan and brewing, like, we really loved clean lagers. We really loved, really estery, phenolic, Belgian style beers. And those are just things that we enjoyed drinking and things we enjoyed brewing. And so we were kind of selfish. And like, when we open a brewery, that's what we're going to make. And the people who like it hopefully will find us. And like you said, it's sort of gone through the hype cycle of everyone was going for the craziest, wildest things. And it seems like people are kind of coming back to the more traditional styles, which I think is great because I think they're delicious.
Well, I think that there's a really strong essence here that you guys are making something that you really like and you're sharing it, right, with people who hopefully will not only be introduced to it, but also who are seeking it out as well. Do you feel, I feel, but I want to get your take on this, that you did the same thing with your space, with like the way in which you have built out the tap room and the environment in which you are providing. Would you say that like your tap room was built in to mimic a tap room that you would want to? You talked about at the very beginning, like the tap rooms you're going to and the breweries you were going to had a very distinct or specific feel. Yours is not that. And so
for sure. Yeah, for sure. That was something that we talked about a lot and spent a lot of time and effort on developing the vibe and the feel of this tap room. We, like you said, had experienced a lot of the kind of the same. And I think our tap room definitely has a feel for both like Zach and I. So Zach and his wife, Sarah Ann, both really loved that old world vintage style and really wanted to lean in heavy to that Victorian. And I enjoyed that style too, but I and my wife, Shanley, definitely a little bit more eccentric and a little bit, crazier and wilder. And so we knew, when we landed on the name Fait La Force, which comes from, country motto Belgium, L'Union Fait La Force, strength and unity. We wanted everything to kind of tie back in. So the beer styles we make are a lot of old world meets new world. And so we're doing really modern techniques and some modern ingredients in old world styles, and seeing how old world, new world styles can sometimes mesh and how they can kind of work cohesively together to make a really beautiful product. And we wanted the same thing in our space. We wanted to represent strength and unity in terms of being welcoming and inviting in a lot of people, but also our space to feel old world meets new world. So it is that old world Victorian, but it's also got an NBA Jam machine, and we've got like old, like painted portrait of Danny DeVito's Ongo Goblovian from It's Always Sunny up here I'm looking at right now. And we've got there's like looks like an old kind of like Victorian balcony set up. It's got Waldorf and Statler from the Muppets sitting up there. So I always kind of joke that they're just like making fun of everyone, and Dumb and Dumber and a little old Victorian portrait. So it's old and it's nice and classy and warm, but it's also like, let's not take ourselves too seriously. Like, this is fun. This is a time to like hang out. Like, we always say that we take the beer super seriously, so you don't have to. Like, we want to be very intentional about what's in the glass, and so what's in the glass is super delicious and awesome, and it's like a really great beer to drink. But just enjoy the beer. Like, we're putting on time and effort into the beer. You put the time and effort into just enjoying it and hanging out with your friends. And so that's kind of the whole vibe behind what we're trying to do here.
I love that. I don't know if that's an official tagline or not, or if it's something you just came up with. But I do love that. Like the phrase you just used, like we take it seriously, so you don't have to. Because yeah, I mean,
And maybe it should be. I've said that phrase a lot. It's definitely not an official coined phrase, but maybe we should make it an
we'll throw the
officially
TM
coined
on
phrase.
there in the yeah. Well, I'll throw the TM on there with a restricted
Yeah, yeah.
symbol in the show notes here. Um, but yeah, I think that's great. And I mean, when I first started working in the brewing industry back in like the early aughts, the tap rooms that I would work in, you would always have those guests that would come in here trying to test my bartenders. Like they would ask all the very specific questions, like what's the IBUs, what hops are you using, the et cetera, et cetera. And it was, it was a fine line of like having to not only set that high standard to like hit that bar that those people wanted you to hit, and also be able to attract and inform and let people who didn't care about the IBUs, they didn't care about all the stats and what have you, and they just wanted to enjoy your product, and in this case obviously really good beer. And so I like that you've really embraced that portion of it as well. And because of your background and because of all the history that you guys have done, you and Alex, that you can hit the high notes when you do get somebody who's really seeking out your product and really wants to know more about it. It's not like you're just like well, at one point you probably were throwing spaghetti against the wall and seeing what was going to stick, as your point
I
earlier.
mean, still are.
Yeah, sometimes you have to, right?
Yeah, that never stops.
Yeah.
No, for sure. I mean, it's funny that you kind of mentioned it like that because I mean, that's definitely true for us too. Like you have the like super craft beer nerds, and then you have everyone else. And like we want to create a product that the super craft beer nerds get excited about, but ultimately they are a small sliver of the whole beer drinking population. And so I mean, when we were first starting out, we kicked around a lot of ideas about having like two separate menus, like having one side that's like the craft beer nerd side of the menu, and then it's just like the other one is like just the normie, side of the menu. And ultimately, what we kind of landed on is we have a binder behind the bar, and in it we have notes for every single beer that we make. And so, our bar staff is really great, and they know the beers pretty well, and are going to know like the colors and the flavors and like the general broad idea of the beer. And then if someone comes in, they're like, what is the grain bill on this, or what is the hops that are in this, or whatever, like what yeast. We have all those notes, so each beer has the notes of each ingredient that's used, some flavor descriptors, and then also like there's compares to, so like we always try and like say similar more popular beers that would like compare to this, so people can say like, oh, if you've had this beer, then it's going to be kind of similar to that, which helps a lot. And then also we say like this is for, so if it's a light super crushable beer, we're like this is for porch drinking and sipping on the beach. And then if it's like a amber ale, we're like this is for boomer dads who are wearing jorts and white New Balances. Like if he comes in, this is the beer for him. There's just certain stereotypes that ring true, and so we'll put those in there. So again, it's kind of getting into like serious, here's all the beer ingredients, all the technical details if you want to know, but also like let's not take this too seriously. It's beer. It's meant to be enjoyed.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Behind the Tab. That concludes our first part of our conversation with Parker Loudermilk of Fait La Force Brewing. Look forward to the next episode where we continue the conversation about his operation and his future in Nashville, Tennessee. Looking forward to talking to you again soon.